Welcome to the Timeless Wisdom Podcast. You know, it's amazing how ancient wisdom can still be so relevant to our lives today. We'll be diving into a powerful concept from the Quran, the idea of rebellion against God and its consequences.
Interesting.
We'll be exploring verse 27 from Surah Al-Baqarah,
Okay.
which outlines 3 key characteristics of those who rebel.
I'm excited for this one.
Me too.
What's fascinating about this verse is how it connects to the human experience on such a deep level. It's not just about abstract theological concepts.
Right.
It's about understanding the very things that lead to fulfillment or emptiness in our lives.
Okay, so the first characteristic mentioned is breaking a covenant with God.
Yeah.
What does that even mean in a practical sense?
Well, if we look back at verse 7.172, the Quran describes this primordial covenant, this innate connection between God and humanity, where we acknowledge his lordship.
Okay.
So in a way, neglecting that inherent connection, that yearning for something greater than ourselves, can be seen as the first form of rebellion.
So even if someone isn't consciously thinking about a covenant in a religious sense, this feeling of being lost or spiritually empty, that could be a sign of this broken connection.
Exactly. It's like ignoring a fundamental part of our nature.
Right.
And you see this reflected in modern psychology as well.
Oh, really?
The search for meaning and purpose is a core human drive.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's like these ancient teachings were already aware of what science is just now starting to understand.
Absolutely.
Now, the second characteristic of rebellion described in verse 27 is severing the bonds which God has commanded to be joined. This part is particularly powerful because it highlights the importance of connection and relationships.
So it's about more than just family ties.
Yes, it starts with family,
Okay.
but it expands outwards to our community, to our fellow believers, and ultimately to all of humanity.
Wow.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness.
And this idea is so relevant today.
We see rising rates of depression and anxiety, especially in societies where those traditional bonds are weakening.
You're absolutely right. And the Quran actually tells a story that really illustrates this point.
Oh, really?
There was a group of people who neglected their families, constantly chasing after material wealth and possessions. And ultimately, this led to societal breakdown, a loss of their sense of purpose, and even corruption.
Wow, so they traded genuine connection for fleeting possessions.
Yeah.
And ended up with nothing.
Precisely. And it's a trap that's easy to fall into even today. The Quran reminds us that true wealth lies in those strong bonds, in those fulfilling relationships.
So how can we apply this wisdom in our own lives?
Well,
What are some practical steps we can take to strengthen those bonds God has commanded to be joined?
it starts with prioritizing our families, spending quality time with them, being present, offering support. It's about nurturing those relationships,
Okay.
but it also extends beyond that. We can reach out to our neighbors, get involved in our communities, and volunteer our time and resources.
Okay.
And of course, for those of us who are believers,
Yes.
supporting our fellow Muslims is crucial.
It's like we're weaving this tapestry of connection, recognizing that we're all threads in this intricate fabric of life.
Beautifully put. And this tapestry is what gives us strength and resilience.
Wow.
It provides us with a sense of belonging, of purpose, and of shared responsibility.
Now, the third characteristic of rebellion mentioned in the verse
Okay.
is spreading corruption and disorder on earth. Seems like a bit of a jump from severing family ties. How are those two connected?
It all boils down to understanding that our actions have consequences, both for ourselves and for the world around us. If we're dishonest with ourselves and with God,
Yeah.
that dishonesty inevitably spills over into our interactions with others. It creates a ripple effect.
So if we break that fundamental covenant with God, it becomes easier to break our word to others, to engage in actions that harm both individuals and society as a whole.
Precisely. It's like a domino effect.
Wow.
But what's interesting is that the Quran also gives us an example that might seem counterintuitive at first.
Okay.
In Surah 9.4, it emphasizes the importance of honoring a treaty with non-believers,
Okay.
even when there are differences in faith.
Oh, interesting. So even if there are disagreements or conflict, keeping our promises regardless of who they're made to is a sign of true faith and character.
Absolutely. It shows that our word is our bond,
Okay.
that we can be trusted to act with integrity even in challenging situations.
Right.
And that reliability, that trustworthiness is one of the foundations of a just and flourishing society.
So we've explored these 3 characteristics of rebellion: breaking the covenant with God, severing ties with family and community, and spreading corruption. It paints a pretty stark picture of the consequences.
It does, but the Quran doesn't just highlight the negative.
Right.
It offers us guidance.
Right.
A path toward a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Okay.
And what's remarkable is how much these ancient teachings align with what modern psychology is discovering about human well-being.
You know, that's what I find so fascinating about these deep dives. It's like these timeless wisdoms are being validated by science centuries later.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me more about those parallels?
Well, for example, psychology recognizes the importance of social connections for mental and emotional well-being.
Right.
The Quran, centuries earlier, emphasized the significance of strong family and community bonds as a source of strength and resilience.
That's amazing.
And think about the consequences of rebellion that we've been discussing. Isolation, a lack of purpose, engaging in harmful behaviors. These are all things that modern psychology recognizes as contributing to mental health issues.
It's like the Quran was laying out a roadmap for psychological well-being centuries ago.
Yeah.
Really incredible.
What's fascinating is that the Quran doesn't just point out the problems, it offers solutions. It emphasizes practices like prayer, gratitude, acts of kindness, and seeking knowledge. And all of these things have been shown to have positive effects on our mental and emotional health.
It's a holistic approach to well-being, encompassing the spiritual, emotional, and social aspects of our lives.
Exactly. And this holistic perspective is what sets the Quran's teachings apart. It's not just about rituals or dogma, it's about living a life of purpose, meaning, and connection.
So when we talk about rebellion against God, it's not just some abstract theological concept. It has real-world consequences that affect our happiness, our relationships, our overall well-being.
Absolutely. And conversely, aligning ourselves with God's guidance, strengthening our connection to Him, can lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
You know, it's interesting how the Quran talks about the rebellious exchanging guidance for error. It almost sounds like an addiction, trading something valuable for something that ultimately harms us.
That's a brilliant observation. And, addiction is often rooted in a feeling of emptiness, a lack of connection. People turn to substances or behaviors to try to fill that void.
The Quran is saying that true fulfillment comes from connecting with God, with our families, with our communities. It's about finding that sense of belonging and purpose in something greater than ourselves.
Precisely. And those connections provide a sense of belonging, of purpose, of love, things that no substance or fleeting pleasure can truly replace.
So it's not just about avoiding negative consequences. It's about actively pursuing a life of meaning and connection. It's about making choices that nurture our souls and bring us closer to God.
Beautifully put. And those choices, those actions create a ripple effect, positively impacting not just ourselves, but also our families, our communities, and ultimately the world around us.
This conversation has been so enlightening. I feel like I'm starting to see these ancient teachings in a whole new light.
That's the beauty of the Quran. Its wisdom is timeless, and its guidance is relevant to every aspect of our lives, even in the modern world.
So for our listeners who are feeling that sense of emptiness, that lack of purpose, or maybe they're struggling with broken relationships or harmful behaviors, what's one piece of advice you would give them based on what we've discussed today?
I would say, turn to the Quran. Explore its teachings with an open heart and mind. Look for the wisdom that resonates with you and start taking small steps to apply it in your life. Strengthen your connection with God through prayer and reflection. Reach out to your family and loved ones. Engage in acts of kindness and service to others.
It's about taking that first step, no matter how small, and trusting that guidance will follow.
Exactly. And remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
So true. This has been such an incredible deep dive into the concept of rebellion and its consequences. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, but it's given me so much to think about.
Me too. And that's the thing about the Quran. It's an ocean of wisdom that we can keep exploring throughout our lives. There's always something new to discover, something deeper to understand.
And for our listeners who want to explore these ideas further, where can they go?
Well, we have a wealth of resources available on our channel, The Broke Entrepreneur. You'll find lectures, articles, and even personal stories that delve deeper into the topics we've discussed today.
Fantastic. I encourage everyone to check it out. And remember, the Quran's wisdom is timeless. Apply it today